All right, guys, welcome to November 2nd's pre-recorded call. All right, so pretty much covering what we had talked about on Friday, right? It was pretty much differentiating our medium-term bias from our short-term bias from our our overall bias, which is still a bit hard to judge, but just based on how we moved on Friday, really shows that, in my opinion, we should still see more upside. We should still see this green line that we've been waiting for since pretty much the 12th of October, which was almost a month ago, right? But either way, nothing much has happened since Friday, especially with Monday's movement, just because that started right pretty much here, and since pretty much our new week open, it's pretty much just been a correction, especially looking at the daily time frame. That's pretty much what is showing to me is pretty much a type of rejection, but just based on how we closed last week, it's honestly still looking a bit bullish to me. We should still see the run on the highs just because of how solidified points work, and pretty much since we had the initial break, pretty much since we had the initial break, right, we had high, low, high, low, high, low, and we have an initial break, meaning this is our solidified low based on, the overall structural range that we had mentioned on Friday. So currently, right, we're pretty much in a correctional phase. We didn't reach, an inefficiency here, but technically we are still navigating through the 50%. And internally in the 50%, we have already seen initial signs of optimism with the immediate leg being the immediate leg being taken out, and that final push to the downside also being taken out. And as a fact, you are seeing this currently start to move up, which makes sense also with EU, right? Because although we have given a decent correction, internally you can see that we have an inefficiency fill here and here, which is essentially what is happening with DXY here with the break of structure, pretty much discounted pricing and continuation to the upside. So there really isn't much to cover. I pretty much covered everything on Friday. Right now it's just continuing the bias, like we said. The current move is, essentially DXY up and pretty much AU being down, at least until, our previous structure point, which I did set an alert on Friday. But yeah, with pretty much EU, same thing. GU, right, naturally, as we have seen strength in the dollar, it makes sense as to why GU is starting to come lower. But the cool thing here is that technically we had the initial structure break, but right, our overall leg has still remained intact, meaning this is still bearish. This is still not necessarily a reason to want to look for buys, even though you had the continuation BOS, just because the reversal BOS would be up here and we are still technically in a high-low retracement. So just looking at this from the perspective of continuation, right, we don't see any reason for buys. I don't see any reason for buys, especially with the fact here that, we have essentially have a type of structural disruption in the form of the low continuation BOS then failing, meaning we had an intent to want to go higher, right, but inevitably failed. And as you can see, bearish order flow is currently back in play based on wick of interest. So with AU, right, remember what we said with this one being the most bullish out of all of them. This one is a bit conflicting just because, right, I don't really see a reason why this could be bearish now. Although yes, bearish order flow is intact and technically our medium-term bias has converted into a bearish perspective, right? Even though we have seen that, right, I don't see a strong mitigation point where this AU move came from, meaning, right, that it potentially could just be a short-term move. Well, short-term is relative based on, how you trade, what you're looking for. So I do really want to see what happens once we start coming into, more of an equilibrium, more of a discount, just to make sure, or not to make sure, but to see if, you know, this unwillingness and then an actual full-on break of structure can sustain itself in the long run. I do want to see if it can sustain itself, and if it can, that's a very good opportunity to get, you know, a pretty decent swing. Especially because this has been the one pair that has shown some type of bullishness, unlike, you know, GU-EU, especially with how we have closed this month, right? Extremely bullish based on the previous POI that we mentioned a couple months ago, back in August, right? That 2-day POI, I think you guys remember. And based on that, we have now given a strong monthly closure. So now it's time to see whether we're going to pretty much react from a turbulence point and the wick of interest on the monthly, or if this is actually a sign of reversal to where we can actually start seeing, you know, us challenge previous relative equal highs up here. But that's, you know, definitely for the long run, definitely a couple moves, definitely will probably even hit Q2 next year maybe, unless we just explode. But yeah, I mean, with that being said, there really isn't much to cover, just because we did cover everything on Friday. But just pretty much a quick summary, right? EU, right? Corrective phase over the weekend, still bearish. The opportunity we showed on Friday, even though it was during Asia, it was pretty much justified via the liquidity grab that we had mentioned. And based on there, right, we explained that, we explained GU, right? GU medium term is now bearish as well, especially with, you know, the essential sign of optimism here with continuation BOS, but it is a sign of optimism and that inevitably failing. And as you can see, high, low, retracement, continuation. So you know that you're medium term bearish, so who knows where we go from there. And with AU, this one's interesting. Even though we have a ton of momentum, I do want to see what happens right after that, you know, final push that it could potentially give us, because this has been pretty much a free fall for 100 pips. Right, so with that being said, I'll probably answer DMs later today. I've just been busy with a couple things. And yeah, guys, with that being said, I'll see you guys on Friday.